Hello everyone, this is Mr. Laubach. Thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about the population growth of the British colonies during the colonial times and the emergence of a national identity. Let's start with population growth. At the beginning of the 1700s, the population was relatively small, about 250,000 people, both Europeans and Africans. But by 1775, right before the Revolution, that number had exploded to 2.5 million. That's a tenfold increase in just one lifetime. And among African Americans, the growth was even more dramatic, from about 28,000 in 1701 to 500,000 by 1775. So how did this happen? There were two major reasons. First, immigration. Almost 1 million people came over to the British colonies from Europe during this time. Think about all the Germans moving into Pennsylvania, or the Scots-Irish settling in the backcountry of the Carolinas and the Appalachians. They were drawn by land, religious freedom, and a chance to start over. Second, natural increase. Colonial families had very high birth rates. In New England, Puritan families regularly had 7, 8, sometimes even 10 kids. Combine that with an abundance of fertile land, whether it's the tobacco fields of Virginia, the wheat fields of Pennsylvania, or the fishing grounds off of New England, and you've got the resources to support these big families. The dependable food supply meant fewer people went hungry, and more children survived to adulthood. All of this fueled rapid population growth. But alongside this story of growth, we also need to talk about slavery. Enslaved Africans became an increasingly large part of the colonial population, especially in the South. The expansion of cash crops like tobacco, rice, and indigo created a massive demand for labor, and enslaved people provided it under brutal conditions. Unlike indentured servants, who might eventually gain freedom, enslaved people were bound for life, and their children inherited their enslaved status. By the mid-1700s, slavery wasn't just an economic system, it was becoming deeply woven into colonial society, creating sharp racial divisions and shaping laws, culture, and even ideas about freedom. Now let's move on to the emergence of a national character, or a national identity. Colonists came with different motivations, some for religious freedom, others for economic opportunity. But once in America, they were shaped by the natural environment and by their experiences here. This created a distinctly American identity. For example, colonists enjoyed freedoms that were unusual in Europe at the time. They had free speech and free press. A good example of this is the 1735 Peter Zenger trial in New York, which helped establish freedom of press as a core principle in America. You can check out my other video solely on the Peter Zenger case here on YouTube. Politically, colonists got used to electing their own representatives, whether through the Virginia House of Burgesses, which was the first elected assembly in the colonies, or New England town meetings, where ordinary men had a direct say on local decisions. Religiously, there was a lot of diversity. Colonies like Rhode Island and Pennsylvania tolerated multiple faiths, something that wasn't very common in Europe at the time. And outsiders noticed the emerging character. English travelers often commented that Americans were restless, practical, and always looking to improve their circumstances. You can see this in the westward movement of the frontier, or in figures like Benjamin Franklin, who wasn't just a printer, but also an inventor, scientist, and statesman. Him and many others were great examples of the, quote, enterprising American spirit that Europeans saw developing in the colonies. So a new national identity was born during the 1700s. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.